Earlier, we highly recommended the latest Rachel Weisz miniseries, Dead Ringers. But anyone who has seen the show knows there are so many questions in their minds. Were there really two people? How did no one around them notice anything wrong throughout the series? Who survived in the end? What happened to the lab-grown babies? So today, we are going to dissect the entire show for you and talk about all the clues and hints that the series gave to make sense of it all. No points in guessing. This would be a video full of spoilers. So skip it if you haven't already seen Dead Ringers but plan to. Let's begin. And we are going to answer one question at a time. Question 1. Was there one of them or two? There was only one person all along. Beverly was the one who survived the swimming accident when they were 10. And while we are never told how the death materialized, it is safe to assume that it was a normal accidental death and there was no specific responsibility assigned to the same. However, there's also some window to think that it was their mother who might have somehow sabotaged Eliott given her despair of having two babies and her sheer disgust at being the mother. But either way, as adults, there was always just one person. A clear example of this was in the scene when the center was opening and only Bev was seen executing the opening. We see the crowd in the next shot and there is no Eliott there either. Another example of this is when Genevieve speaks with Bev multiple times, suggesting that there is no Eliott. Once she says, "You are schizophrenic," and Bev replies, "I don't want to be," suggesting that Bev is completely aware of a condition and is unable to do anything about it. Or maybe just enjoys the power it gave her. Bev also says that she almost forgot Eliott existed at least twice, suggesting that she is so madly in love with Genevieve that Eliott's personality isn't able to come out for long periods when she is with Genevieve. Another time, just before Genevieve is about to take Bev out for a holiday, Genevieve says it would be insane to ask Eliott, again suggesting why would she ask someone who isn't there. Leaving from the investment meetup, we can see only Bev leaving from the location, and Eliott is seen only when we see her in the car on the way. The shot is long and still and leaves no room for where Eliott was at this point. On a side note, at no point we hear about Eliott's periods or anything specific about her body. This is also because she does not have one of her own. The old woman who Eliott killed kept calling her Two-Face and also suggested that the two of them are half of each person and not double the person, suggesting very clearly that there is one body, two people. Eliott's anger in this scene is also an extension of her anger of not being in total control of this body, and that Beverly makes the call on when who exists more often than not. Her schizophrenia was clearly established when she goes out in the middle of the night and says that the blood on her is not hers, even though there's no blood on her. Second big question, how did nobody notice that there is just one person throughout the series? This answer is split in two parts. First, we see the entire story from Bev and Eliott's perspective, depending upon who's in control. So what we see are actually their mental projections, and hence we see both of them at most times. Second part of this answer is more social engineering based. There's a dialogue when Genevieve meets Eliott when she says everyone in Manhattan knows about them. This basically means that everyone around them knows about their condition and are happy to play along given their brilliance and value to the society. Also, the two characters have extremely different talent traits, which means killing one would mean killing the talent of that twin. Given how good both were, it just wasn't worth the truth. Now, before I decode that ending, let's dive deeper in some of the most confusing scenes that became even more perplexing after that end. At this point, I would also request to give this video a like so this reaches more and more cinephiles like you and helps us make more videos like this in the future. Back to the video. Beverly left for the trip. Then how come Eliott killed the old woman that night? So Bev went for the trip but came back by midnight as she got a call from Eliott when she says she's in trouble. She comes back and Eliott takes over. Eliott parties and the sequence ends with Eliott reenacting the call that Bev already received a few hours ago. This is probably one of the only times in the series when they don't move chronologically. How do they both talk to each other on phone? So their phone conversations are always in their head. This is clearly seen when throughout the series, Bev's phone keeps buzzing and she hears it along with us, while nobody around her ever notices the ringing phone. At the Montgomery house, it was only Eliott in the operating room because Bev absolutely hated the father and couldn't take it that he was a part of the C-section. So she let Eliott take over and that caused the accident. When Eliott was banished from the Montgomery house, Silas plays along and drives out alone with Eliott. Now we know Silas was cancelled during the Me Too movement and finds this story as his opportunity to uncancel himself and hence plays along. His rash driving can be directly accounting to his drinking problem, or that can again be an extension of what Bev wanted to see, and hence by extension we saw it too. In fact, when Eliott reaches home immediately after, the dog does not move after looking at her at all. The relationship between the sisters. This is a complicated one. It is clear both have talents and issues in equal measure. Eliott has supreme research capabilities that everyone admires and looks up to, while Bev has values and love, something that Eliott is extremely jealous of. But it is not that Bev isn't jealous of Eliott. In fact, there is enough to suggest that Bev is even more jealous of Eliott. Every time Eliott's ideas are accepted, Bev looks disgruntled. Eliott's way of being the life of the conversation is something Bev wishes she had. In fact, the only big advantage Bev had over Eliott was that she had found love. In every other way, Eliott was possibly superior. This explains that ending a lot in fact. During the pre-climax, we see Eliott was locked in the room with the babies in the lab, because that is the only place nobody else could go to. It was a mantle-only room and Bev left Eliott there. And that brings us to the climax. Those last 15 minutes that were hard to look at and hard to look away from in equal measure. So we have already established that it was Bev who survived the swim, and the trauma of her sister's death made her create the second persona of the perfect mantle. The sister who's brilliant, outgoing, rash, and enjoys life to the fullest. She's everything Bev isn't, and this was mentioned a couple of times. Eliott is the better Beverly. Throughout the period of separation, Bev isn't at peace. She is not happy and needs the kicks that Eliott used to bring to her life. This scene also re-establishes that Bev survived and had to live with the trauma and sadness all her life, while Eliott has no idea because she is just a figment of Bev's imagination. She does not remember the swimming accident at all because she was born after that day. So Bev decides that Bev needs to die. She says this in as many words just before the final surgery. I have to climb inside of you now, clearly suggesting that Bev is done and Eliott needs to take over this body. Bev's goodbye to Genevieve is also quite telling, given that this is the first time we hear her saying I love you to her, and that too 5 times. It is clearly a last goodbye. Also, Beverly's baby had died when she suspected she had a miscarriage. Eliott just came and made her believe that the baby isn't dead, and in fact that there are 2 of them. This was Eliott setting up to take over months before the climax, and the baby bump was just a ruse for Bev to keep believing that she was still pregnant. In fact, their maid, who was also an amazing real-life artist, had to have a huge part in this entire play and had to have been instructed by Eliott to partake. So during the climax, Bev cuts open the baby bags and then makes a cut into her own abdomen. Thereafter taking the babies from the research center, who were her and Tom's, and walking out as Beverly. The swap was established again as they both swapped the headband during this sequence, suggesting that Eliott was supposed to act like Bev from now on. This is also why obviously there were no dead bodies and no fully grown babies inside the lab, else they would have all been arrested. Then comes the most important scene of the show, and one that leaves no room for confusion, unlike the film this series was inspired from. In the mid-credit scene, when the woman in the park asks if Beverly remembered about the sessions, she did not know because it wasn't her at all. It was Eliott's conscience alone and Bev was gone. From now on, Eliott is the only one living the life that has it all. Happiness, talent, research, people, love and babies. So that was it. Dead Ringers is an extremely difficult watch, but one that rewards you amazingly well if you watch it a second time. And in fact, I highly recommend you do so yourself. And let me know in comments if you found more breadcrumbs that I might have missed on. Check out link in description to see if it is playing in your country. This is Highly Recommended. See you soon.